Hi, welcome to the January 26th meeting of the Kubernetes IoT Edge Working Group. We have a small agenda today, but as always, we're open to last minute adds, even verbally on the agenda, to expand this into just a birds of a feather discussion on all topics related to Kubernetes, Edge, and IoT. The items we've got so far on the agenda is a reminder that we've got this Kubernetes on the Edge Day co-located event at KubeCon Europe. I'll put a link to that in the notes documented in the chat in just a moment. But it's May 17th. It's my understanding right now that this is a physical event. Certainly there will be a physical option, but I don't believe that there is an online attendance or presentation option. That could change because the world is changing with regard to COVID. So just take that as tentative, but CFPs for that are open now. I would expect that would be similar to these Kubernetes on the Edge days that have occurred at KubeCon Europe last year and at KubeCon North America this year, with the exception being that it's been a while since we had a physical version of that. And sponsorships are still open, by the way, as well, or at least they were earlier in the week when I heard from the Linux Foundation organizers. And KubeCon itself is that whole week of May the 16th. Originally, I think I understood that was going to be a physical only event, but I've noticed now that the website says that at least for purposes of attending, it appears to be hybrid because there's a virtual attendance option. CFPs for that main conference are closed at this point, but I don't believe they have announced the speakers yet. That's pretty easy to find with a Google search, but I'll update the notes later on details of that. As usual, the CNCF has invited this working group to submit a proposal for a maintainer track talk. And that is due in a week or two, I believe. So we have the option of coming up with an idea on something to present in the maintainer track at that conference. It might be a good idea I think we're open to all suggestions from members on what might go in there. It probably shouldn't, in my experience, attempt to cover the whole universe, but be something a little more focused on one topic with an open and close that just explains what this group is and how you can get involved. But I think attempting to cover the whole universe of Kubernetes, Edge, and IoT stretches it so thin that in the early days, it might have been of value, but now we need to move on to have something a little more focused to deliver value and to draw an audience. But there's a lot of selections of what that might be. The other topic I put on the agenda is that the Kubernetes project runs with a mechanism for SIGs, working groups, and user groups to periodically report up to the community steering organization. And we're due to give a report on this group. We've done it in the past. So I think Dion has usually headed up that effort. I'm hoping he can do it again, but it is something that everyone should participate in, both chairs, leads, and members. Dion as chair can make the rules, but I'd suggest, having been chairs of other groups and seen a lot of these groups within Kubernetes, that I like a mechanism where maybe the organizers come up with a first approach and then share the document for comment. And then ultimately, before we submit this report, every member gets an opportunity, should they choose to do it, to put in their own comment in that document that, as far as I'm concerned, I'm willing to take them completely unedited, because, you know, I don't want to pressure or put words in anybody's mouth, with the caveat that any comment should abide by the code of conduct. You know, there might be some limits to what is appropriate for such a comment, but you know, be open, honest, and say what you think, and we'll accept it. I think we're trying to operate that group on that policy anyway, for accepting feedback, not just when these reports come due, but, you know, for the continuum of the operation of this group. But just throwing that out there is both an opportunity and maybe an obligation, and something we can discuss more at this meeting. Does anybody, oh, let me mention, since Frederick is here, I'll mention a sidebar thing. So before the meeting started, I just told Dion that I'm an organizer of this Scale open source conference. And they just announced in the last couple of days that that was slated for March, and it's been postponed to July because of the prevalence of Omicron here in Los Angeles. There were just too many people nervous about attending with the news of rapidly growing positive test results. Yeah. Living here in LA, my observation is that this is spreading rapidly, but, you know, the people who get it don't seem to be reporting very severe symptoms, but it does cause people to be nervous about signing up for travel, speaking, and attending the conference that's just, you know, a month and a half out. So the organization decided to slide it into July. And Frederick, I think the reason I think it's important to you, you should have gotten a notice that your talk got accepted, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to say that, accepted. And I was about, you know, the email is in my draft inbox, but essentially I will reply this afternoon that, yeah, I'm fine with the new date, and hopefully I'll be able to make it if the virus doesn't get in the way.
And even though that's a different conference, the reason I bring it up in this group is the talk that was accepted from Frederick is on Kubernetes. So it is on Edge. So it is
it's
proper subject matter.
Of the one you liked. So.
Yeah, it was I was one of the reviewers, and great talk. There is, by the way, speaking of conferences, another thing that they just announced is that they are holding Open Source Summit sometime in the summer. I can't remember the exact date, but it's in Austin, Texas.
That's June. That's June 20-ish something.
All right, got it. And I believe that is open for CFPs now. And
yes,
they have traditionally had a track on Edge and embedded. So I think it would be of interest to people who attend this group. I've been there before.
And at least in the last few editions, I've been on the program committee for that. So if they ask me again, Dion and Kilton, you have a friend. Whatever that means.
Apparently I don't, but
submit in the track that I moderate and you will have a friend.
Okay. But yeah, anyway, that one has a track for that. I think it's interesting that in my experience, when it comes to Edge and IoT, they have Open Source Summit, North America, Europe, and Japan. And I think maybe they have different focuses, but I came away from those thinking that the Edge track has been a little more emphasized in Europe and Japan, although the Japan one is heavily slated towards automotive too.
Yeah.
But
and now I see an entry for Open Source Summit Latin America. I'm not sure if that's a new thing for this year, but at least to me, it's new. So anyway,
which one is that again?
Open Source Summit Latin America in August.
Oh, Latin America. Okay. Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Where is it? Where is it located?
I'm checking the details now, but I'm on the CFP page, so they don't mention where it is. Anyway, I will.
Okay, if
I
you
will
find out, let us know, and because I think it
absolutely.
might be of interest. I don't know of anybody who's attended. Well, actually, I think once or twice we had somebody from Mexico join a meeting in this group, but it's been a while. I just asked because if it's an interesting location, maybe I'll combine it with a personal trip. Okay, well,
there's an event page, but they don't seem to mention where it is. Anyway, that's
okay.
weird.
So I'm done with the things I wanted to drop into the agenda. We can circle back and cover them. But if anybody else has anything to nominate for something they want to talk about, or even things you've recently observed and want to call attention to, you're free to go for it.
Yeah, I don't have anything. The one thing I can say about the report and what you discussed is that I'm happy. I'm fine with the process that you highlighted, and I'm happy to provide feedback. And if I write any extended feedback and comments, you can, I don't think we'll have any problems with the the policies or anything like that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be problems. I don't think I personally need pats on the back. And one of the big issues is that if we troubled anybody, they're unlikely to show up for this meeting, to be aware there's an opportunity to engage in self-improvement, because unfortunately, they just drop. But, the whole point of doing it is to have a continual process for getting better. So hopefully we can pull that off. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if it's COVID or whatever, but I think my gut feel, without tabulating the actual metrics, is that attendance has dropped a bit over the past year or so. Could be Zoom burnout or whatever, but we kind of peaked a while ago and it's dropped off. Not sure how to
notice. Yeah, I've noticed it in several other places as well, though. So I really think it is a global phenomenon due to downward pressure on people in all industries. That's my take on it.
And then,
I concur to that.
But any ideas for, making this something that people get value out of? I mean, that's the key to driving attendance. And a lot of it is, I think, if you get the same people over and over, there's a risk it just becomes an echo chamber rather than, something vibrant and growing. Frankly, I think Kubernetes in general is like that. And hopefully it isn't one of these things like, what is that thing that's common in the marketing people of the trough of disillusionment and some project peaking out in hype and all of that. There might be something to it or maybe not, but we'll see. For that report, another topic is that this relates to the Kubernetes community guidelines themselves, but they have a mechanism where they require that SIGs, working groups and user groups, have charters that declare a purpose, put in a mechanism for governance to place diverse leaders, things like that, rules that you can't have it all people from one company. We probably, I haven't heard, but we have a co-chair in this group, Cindy, who was great, but I haven't heard from her for about a year, and don't, it could be with COVID, she's got issues, but maybe we could entertain some changes in who is listed in this group as the group of chairs and leads, to get more active and more diverse leadership of the group. It's something that is in the report, and the steering will expect us to cover that. They also have an expectation that these working groups are operated underneath the supervisory governance of SIGs, and that when this charter system was initially developed, I think somebody had the expectation that these groups we're in charge of maintaining code associated with the Kubernetes project. And we're really not doing that in this group at this time.
I don't see that happening either.
Yeah.
Right?
So it doesn't really align with some of the things asked for in our report. We have to be honest and say that, but maybe it's appropriate for us to change those expectations that every working group does code, or maybe it's time to suggest that we belong in a different category. There is a category called user groups, and it's meant to serve people who are using Kubernetes as opposed to working on code. So one thing to entertain is that maybe this group operates more closely like a user group than it does what they consider a working group. Now, this code expectation, I think, Dion, you've been in this group longer than I have, but I think maybe that this group started before they put that rule in place. So it got grandfathered in under an older expectation where that wasn't part of it. And one thing we could do is simply call that to their attention that, hey, look, you went and changed the description without actually going out there and surveying how these things were working in the first place. And the problem is that description, not, the operation.
It's hard to have an opinion on that when you don't know what the consequences would be.
Yeah.
So do you have any idea of what could be the consequences of saying that?
I don't know if
we
they
are
say that
grandfathered
we're
or
operating
moving to
in some
user?
category that isn't, isn't authorized under the charter or something. I suppose, it could be anything from find another position you fit into to change the rules or just drop the group. So it's hard to say. It should be a discussion, and I'm not expecting that we get taken out behind the barn and and carved up, but it'll be what it'll be, and we'll see. But anyway, just throwing it out there, I think for now, I'm going to, if he'll accept it, drop this on Dion's shoulders to compose a draft document and share it, because he's done it a few times before. And then we'll just take it from there. I think we've been given an expected deadline, but I don't recall what it is. And with that said, let's move on to.
Let me take a look. I think the deadline is February 14 for a PR.
Okay. No, that's pretty quick, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I'm happy to provide feedback as soon as I get the link to a draft.
Okay. I put a link not to that, but to the general agenda notes document that I should have done earlier in the meeting. But sorry. Okay, and then topic 2 on the agenda is the maintainer track section. Now, one idea that got proposed, Kate Goldenring of Microsoft was suggesting back in December when normal CFPs were open, that she would like to be part of an effort to compose a panel of users of Kubernetes at Edge. And we tried just, we got started a little bit late, but spent a couple weeks trying to recruit a diverse panel of users and couldn't get it done by the time of the CFP deadline. But that's one possible thing that we could put out there if we could secure users. Now, the difficulty there is that if this, you're not allowed to have a hybrid of some presenting online, some physical. And I think physical might be preferable. I just like the chemistry if the conference has the physical option. And bottom line is, it would be great if we had a user panel, if we could perhaps operate this physically at the event. However, my experience has been with these user panels that, unlike vendors, they have a more difficult time getting budget for travel, and particularly under COVID, where a lot of companies have additional impediments out of safety concerns that go beyond just the budgetary issue. And that this is in Europe, so it probably means that, you know, in terms of people being willing to attend, those users would be more than likely Europe-based already for travel cost reasons. And, you know, that it kind of makes recruiting a whole panel of people like this a little bit difficult, especially for me, not being based in Europe. I don't have that many contacts over there myself to engage in recruiting, but just throwing that out there, that's one possible thing that we could cover in the maintainer track. I'd also maybe like to avoid things that we covered recently, just let's keep it fresh. So the last one, if you'll recall, was on WebAssembly. I think that was a great presentation.
Yeah, I thought that went well.
Let's not do it again this quickly, you know, maybe a year later, but, and I think we've had topics on integrating in devices too small to run Kubernetes themselves, using, you know, alternate communications and eventing technology. And if I'm not mistaken, that was one we've done in the past year. But if somebody's got ideas for things that, you know, maybe we haven't touched on ever or haven't touched on recently, I think those would be good candidates for covering in a maintainer track session. And I think, well, I think all of us on our call have seen those before. So you realize they're down to about 35 minutes. So there's a limit. That's one of the reasons why trying to be the jack of all trades, cover the whole universe, is not ever going to get very deep. And at least if we pick some topic, I think we can manage to get at least moderately deep on it as long as we focus. So I'll give up the mic and ask, maybe I'll put every one of you on the spot to throw out one idea, even good or bad, just whatever pops up the top of your head.
Idea would be, as I said, like we are working on some bigger demo with the BLE mesh that will use the whole stack. So the firmware written in Rust and BLE mesh, then some gateway that will push that to the cloud, and then what we have in the cloud with the Drogue IoT and Ditto and everything. So it's a whole architecture basically presenting the one particular use case. And there's the Kubernetes on the cloud. There might be on the gateway on the edge. I'm not sure yet, but that's something I can help with.
That sounds good. One thing personally that I would be unfortunately I don't have the time to invest on this, but one thing I would be curious about is how is it to work with various IoT protocols in a Kubernetes context, in the sense that you have CoAP, MQTT, Lightweight M2M, DDS, Zeno, whatever, right? So there are maybe pitfalls to some of those in a Kubernetes context, or maybe they are all equal and they could be worthwhile to discover for a Kubernetes audience. But yeah, that's more of a peripheral concern right now. My focus, unfortunately, is on my book project. So till the end of May or June, you know, I will be busy with the first draft of that then. Yeah.
So before anybody steals this, which maybe they will because it came up in the Eclipse meeting, but I thought that subject of device provisioning, which you will, and then
that was mine.
Okay. Well, that probably means if two of us have it, it might be a good idea.
Yeah, and I think the world wants to know. But also, like, let's be cautious about the workload required to get such a demo together. But that was on my mind, and then I'll extend it so that I'm still making an original contribution here. What about the deployment also of of microservices and so on to the edge via with Kubernetes stuff, where we're still keeping intact secrets. Because that is a subject on people's mind is, yes, the secret infrastructure might be fine, but once the container is running, has that not been embedded as an environment variable? And if you can get in the device, so just opening that topic for discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a good add and probably even essential, because one of the keys for this being under the auspices of this group is it has to be Kubernetes related. And this subject of device provisioning and provenance, by and large, much of what goes on there occurs as a foundation that is below the Kubernetes abstraction layer.
Right.
So it's not really Kubernetes related per se. The Venn diagram of people who are interested in it, probably, anybody trying to use Kubernetes at Edge is probably interested in it, but there's nothing Kubernetes about much of that. So if you move it up to include the secret management, I think that might be an essential element of making that the topic of a maintainer track session.
Cool.
And then it would be good if you can broach as well, not just the initial provisioning, but the rotation. I mean, in long-lived deployments, right? You will run into this this difficulty that at some point you need to swap some of those certificates for ones that won't expire 2 days from now, right? So that dimension would be important as well.
I just threw out another one that popped in my head as I'm thinking of it too. Like, I started thinking, how does Kubernetes get involved with this provisioning and things? And I know from prior discussions of people trying to do this, that a big element becomes operation when you're severed from internet connectivity, either permanently, periodically, whatever. And it entails things like hosting container images and other binaries so that you can recover from power outages, do updates and things. And that could be related to the device provisioning and provenance in some way. And it can tend to bring in Kubernetes, because sometimes people host the gateways and binary and image registry components on Kubernetes itself, either at a gateway mezzanine location or at Edge. But maybe air-gapped Kubernetes operation is a third potential topic. It isn't 100% aligned with Edge. People might want to have a whole data center air-gapped, although I think that's kind of rare. But there's an awful lot of Edge use cases where, by either unfortunate necessity or design, these edge locations operate air-gapped during at least part of their life. And I think that's a pretty rich topic potentially.
Defense, intelligence, whatever. There are many environments where, in theory, you could be interested in running it that way. I will need to drop off. Unfortunately, I can't stay for the whole call.
Okay, well, thanks for your contributions, and we'll check with you later.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking forward to contribute whatever little sliver of knowledge I have, but obviously I'm not the Kubernetes-centric guy.
I mean, one thing related to the KubeCon maintainer track is, for the people here who knows whether their status on whether they could attend physically or would we even want to in mid-May in Spain.
That's, at this point in time, I have no idea. Most of the conferences and events I had scheduled for the first half of the year have been pushed back. So right now I have a logjam of things in June. I'm not even, I will need to make tough choices.
And who knows? I mean, this one could be pushed back too, but it's far enough out there that I think maybe not, but everybody's guessing at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So to be honest, for May, I have no idea if I would actually be able to attend or not at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you go.
I've got my booster shot and everything, but if a government close the border, they close the border, right? So we don't know.
Okay. Well, thanks. Good to see you.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything to add with regard to that maintainer track? This is sort of, like our report to steering, where we do have a fuse on this of just a couple of weeks. So I guess I have a list so far of 3 nominations. Maybe I'll get back with Kate to ask about her idea from December. We'll
And
probably
maybe we
have
can
to pick
also-
one very soon and focus on it.
Maybe we can also offer Kate if she want to talk more about her stuff there. So that would be also good for me.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered the report. We've covered KubeCon maintainer track and the Edge Day. I think that's about it that I put on the agenda, unless somebody else has anything more. Another thing I guess I'd like to bring up is trying to get some fresh presentations into this group. Because I think part of that is we haven't been that successful at getting people to present on topics, and that tends to draw attendance. So one of the things I suggested, just because I came across it in an article, I just dropped it in chat, but it was this Red Hat microshift. So maybe we can get somebody to talk about that at an upcoming meeting. And if anybody else has any other ideas of some open source project where we could recruit a speaker. If either of you missed it, that presentation on Portainer that occurred back a while ago, I thought was just fantastic. It was that was really an interesting presentation by Neil Cresswell.
I missed it, but I know Neil, so that's I've seen Portainer stuff and haven't caught up with them, but I'll check it out, the recording. I'm sure it was awesome. Yeah,
and it was, if you've seen Portainer, I guess you've seen it, but at the end we got into kind of free form discussion. It isn't maybe 5 minutes worth, but even talking about the potential to embellish what was going on there by trying to manage WebAssemblies and things. So it drifted from a pre-composed presentation and demo into just free form discussion. And I thought it was pretty interesting.
Cool.
But anyway, I'd like to have more events like that where we can maybe get some knowledgeable presenter on.
I'll try to
something.
help with the microshift. So let me try to do this in next couple of days.
Yeah. If there's a roadblock, I mean, I'm totally open. I'd rather have it be some expert from the actual project, but if somebody's got a deck, I'm perfectly willing on some of these. Maybe I've got enough on my plate for the next month, but I'm willing to go just do kind of a person in the street experience thing on trying to use one of these. And if I can just get a starting point of a summary deck from somebody, and I'll put it on myself if the organizer doesn't want to do it. But often I find there's real value in somebody who doesn't have the conflict of being with a vendor trying to promote something and just giving kind of the honest appraisal of, hey, I tried to use this thing and this is how it went for me.
Yeah, that could be really good.
Okay, at this point, we've still got 20 minutes if somebody has anything else they wanted to bring up. Otherwise, I'm open to ending this session a little bit early.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Okay, good seeing you all, and we'll catch you at the next meeting. Bye.
Okay, sounds good. See ya.